examples of entitlement in this video? Oops. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Anyone can guess what are some examples of entitlement in this video? Maybe no rules at home. Yeah, swapping bedrooms. Can you imagine
It's a
any
good
of us
one.
asking our parents to swap our bedrooms? I wonder what the heck they would do to us if we dare to ask. Did you guys also notice the 5-year-old daughter watching MTV and like a topless video, and the parents not even caring about that? Uh, and there was also so many different things. There were no rules at the house, and how did then Regina George act, right? As we all know later in the movie, she becomes very, very entitled. So with that, I'd like to give it off. If you guys can then go to the Menti again, and we'll have the next question. All right, Calvin, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry, guys, I'm back. You guys can hear me good?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So we have a few Menti questions. Please feel free to answer it, as truthfully as you can. Don't think too much. First answer is most true, so don't discount it. And one is for I strongly do not feel like myself with this statement, and 6 is you strongly feel or you strongly agree with this statement. So please answer it. Wow. Okay, we have a lot
Wow,
answered.
someone's entitled. That number one. Someone's entitled.
Well, I guess you're in the right ministry here. So I don't think I have to read the questions to you guys. You guys can read it from the screen right away. But yeah, for me, I have a lot of trouble accepting no for an answer when I want something from other people. Definitely. I'm special and I shouldn't have to accept many of the restriction or limitation placed on other people to some extent, right? I see that everyone, hate be constrained or be kept from what they want, right? I think that's a very, very clear-cut example of being entitled. Don't discount it. I feel that I shouldn't have to follow the normal rules or convention that other people do. Yes. I mean, if you guys have ridden past the bus lane, that should be a 6 for everyone here. I feel that what I have to offer is greater than the contribution of others. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. The big bosses here definitely feel that way. So Abe, don't discount it, right? You put 7 there, okay? All right. Interesting. Okay. So we have a mixed bag now. Some saying no, but we can see that majority hate be constrained is the highest one here. Okay. I think that's everyone in the Menti. Let's go back to the slide. All right. I just want to welcome everyone here to Jam, the Gikada entitled ministry. That's what we are here. But jokes, not really, right? We all here in I wouldn't say in Jam, but most of everyone here are to some extent entitled, right? And the root cause of the schema, like Marshall mentioned previously, is if we grew up with virtually no restriction, entitlement and insufficient self-control will surface. We will talk about this more later. I will share about my personal experience being entitled. Ale will share her experience about insufficient self-control. Next slide, Marsh. So what is entitlement? Well, the definition from Uncle Google here is the belief that one is inherently deserving or more deserving of privileges or special treatment, right? The saying that I am special and better than other people, rules should not apply to me, and I should always come first. So the definition of entitlement as well is, the rule that guide reciprocity, right, which is give and take in relationships are hard for the individual to understand, for entitled individual to understand. They're often just takers and do not put effort into relationships. Things have usually come easy to them, and it is very hard for them to show empathy, humility, and servitude. So, if you guys to some extent feel that, oh, that might be me, well, maybe, you guys are entitled, because, when I read this, I'm like, oh, okay, yes, that is also me. So that is the definition of entitled, right? And next slide, Marsh. So entitlement starts from a young age. Yeah, children with entitlement, as you can see from the comic here, you can feel free to read the comic as well. And children with entitlement, a life trap, will grow up to believe that what they want or need should always be a priority. It is okay for them to cheat on tests or at sports, and they minimize it. I'm sure many of you here have done that to some extent. Entitled individuals do not care if getting their way disadvantages others. They don't think twice about changing the rules when playing a game. As long as they win, that's a keynote there. As long as they win, that is what matters. And they do not have any awareness of the pain other people feels. They rarely, if ever, put themselves in other people's shoes. They are usually not in tune with other people's feeling, but are totally in tune with their own. So when challenged about their behavior, they often think that people should accept them the way they are. One of the key phrases that I often hear, oh, it's not me, it's you. And I've used that many times, especially when I'm in a have a fighting with someone. It's not me, it's you. That's have an issue, right? So, but I'm sure, do you guys feel this way from this statement? Next slide, Mark. So, and entitlement has actually two types of entitlement, right? Children can develop this entitlement life trap in two ways. The first one is called pure entitlement. So pure entitlement is basically being told that they are more special than other kids, having no limits, and never being made to take responsibility for their actions. Words or moods, with their action, words or moods, they grow up into purely spoiled narcissists, unable to be thoughtful of others, right? On the other hand, fragile entitlement, which is the second type of entitlement, this form of the life trap comes from being spoiled, but it is a reaction to unmet core needs for connection. Yeah. Oh, hello. Someone else want to take it. Am I upside down? Hold on. I have to flip it around. Am I still upside down? I'm sorry, guys. I'm entitled that way, so you guys have to watch me upside down. That's how it is. Okay. Am I right set up now? Am I right set up?
Calvin, you're always right. Remember that.
All right. Okay. I'm always right. It's your fault, not my fault. Okay, I'm kidding. That was not supposed to happen, guys. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Okay. It's right. Let me repeat that. Okay. Fragile entitlement, right? This form of life trap comes not from being spoiled, but is a reaction to unmet core emotional needs for connection and acceptance, or realistic expectations, and is rooted in either the defectiveness life trap or the emotional deprivation life trap. When needs for caring and recognition of I have to take care of myself first, and no one else is looking out for me, develops, right? So when you relate to this statement, then most likely you have the second type of entitlement, which is fragile entitlement, right? I will relate more to this in the background story about me when I was young, because I feel that I have this second type of entitlement, which is the fragile entitlement. Life trap growing up. Entitled children will often become leaders at schools, in sports, or in gangs. Who boast about not taking no for an answer, And highly entitled individuals do not like to hear the word no. They may even receive compliments for their natural leadership qualities. Thank you, thank you. No, I'm kidding. And for being so determined in life, they do not like to work under others. And since they do not like rules, but they do not mind enforcing rules with to others, right? Adults with entitlement life trap generally hate being vulnerable and sharing about their weaknesses, but they love to boast about their strength. So thank you, Marshall, for pointing at the obvious. uh, so a bit about my story, right? Why I said that. I relate more to the second type of entitlement, which is the fragile entitlement, right? As mentioned, this form of entitlement is not from being spoiled, but it is a reaction to unmet core needs, right? For connection and realistic expectations, and it's and basically when I hear the response of I have to take care of myself first and no one else is looking out for me, that's how I was growing up, right? Because ever since I was young, I was very independent, but that was created by the situation. To some extent, my parents were absent. I had my core needs met with abundance. I have a roof over my head. I was never lacking in food, education, entertainment, safety. But emotional connection with them, with my parents, was very minimal. And next slide, Marsh. So I was just going through some photos to share you guys some old photos, to show the cute side of me. But as I was going through this picture, I can see like even since I was young, I was like such an entitled kiddo. If I look back, like just want to give myself a smack in the face. Some background context. So next slide, Marsh. So some background context, right? At the age of 9 years old, during the 1997-98 Asian crisis, maybe some of you here are not even born yet, or maybe some of you are just a baby, but I was 9 years old. And when the crisis happened, riots were happening everywhere in Indonesia. I was sent abroad to Singapore to continue my study there, and have pretty much lived away from my parents since, with them only coming back and forth every few months. I was never told when to sleep or when to study or when to stop playing games. I sleep when I'm tired. I study when there's a test the next day. I stop playing games when my Game Boy battery died. That's how I limit myself, right? And next slide, Marsh. And by the time I was 12 years old, I came back to Indonesia for middle school. My parents were very liberal. I pretty much can do many things that normal middle schoolers are not allowed to. And growing up in an era of no smartphones mean there was less control and oversight. Even at that age, I went out late at night without much restriction. They never scolded me for going home too late, and at times they're already fast asleep when I come home. I was allowed sleepovers at my friend's house, sometimes for a couple of days, no question asked. Sometimes even if tomorrow is school day, I'll just borrow, you know, their clothes, right? But I didn't borrow the underpants like Marshall, so I'm not that bad. We migrated to Australia during my high school, and that was a brief period that I lived with my parents. They went to Indonesia after a few years, and basically I continued on with my university in Australia. I remember in one of the summer breaks during high school, I was essentially in my room all week, and my dad had a pep talk with me, about it. He basically said that it's good to be book smart, but it's a lot more important to be street smart. Street smart, that was one of the lessons that he told me, and I took that as a declaration to go out of the house and socialize, and that's exactly what I did. The only restriction that my parents ever gave me was no smoking and no drugs. But even then, as a teen, of course I did some of those, right? Hashtag entitled. But I just, it's just that I never get caught. So for me, the view I had for rules is that, if you didn't break it, sorry, you didn't break it if you didn't get caught, right? So rules essentially don't really apply, you know. And at some point during my teens, I was hanging out with a rowdy crowd. You know, even then, my dad did not restrict me from going out with them. He only told me that since I am considered a juvenile, I need to be aware of my own actions and be responsible for my own decision. If I were to be in trouble with the law, that I would need to handle it myself. You know, that was adulting for me, right? Uh, so for me, I always thought that I have to take care of myself, and no one else is looking out for me. You know, and the consequences of that was I become very entitled in the fragile entitled way. This was very apparent in my during my young adult life, especially in my relationship with girls. Um, Remember, as long as I win, it doesn't matter what the others feel. You know, it doesn't matter what they felt. Right? Dating was like a game, you know, and the thrill was in the chase. I would justify that it's not cheating if we didn't have a status in the first place. And most of the time, I would lead a girl on to get what I want. And when I'm over it, yeah, ya udah, I move on to the next one. You know, like throwing away used tissue, you know, in a very bad way of putting it, right? And with very little or no remorse, you know, I didn't care what she felt or what they felt. You know, I had this girl who, for some odd reason, was head over heels for me. And out of nowhere, you know, I broke off the relationship because I was bored of her, and I was taking her home in the middle of a rainy winter night in Australia, and she jumped out of the moving car. You know, it was crazy, but at that moment, I thought she was crazy, and you know, she could have dented my car. You know, that was what I was going through my mind, right? And what the other person felt or went through didn't weigh me down at all. You know, as long as I was content and I was happy with my decision. You know, um, looking back, there was so many other instances where I was acting very entitled, even without me realizing it. Uh, you know, from the time that I went to student exchange in Hong Kong for 6 months without asking permission to my parents and only letting them know basically like a week before my departure, you know, or over trivial matters like parking in a no parking zone because I deserve a parking spot. You know, I've been going around in this parking spot for like 5 minutes and oh my God, right, I need a spot. So I'm just gonna park outside, you know, over here. Or, you know, driving through the bus lane because of traffic, or the many instances of coming late for a meeting because I didn't want to come early to wait for others, and even not even not accepting a no from Olive when I asked her to be my girlfriend, you know, because I know deep down that I could get her. You know, that's how entitled I was. Uh, sorry, she's laughing. She's laughing on the corner. Uh, uh, um, but you know, but I think the more recent and probably one of the worst case was in 2016 during our pre-wedding trip in Japan. This was when I made Kobudi cried. I don't know if you know if some of you know who Kobudi is here, but he shared a few times. But because I was so entitled, I made him cry over the phone, and I made Olivia wait in the train station for 2 hours, you know, without any means of communication. Long story short, Olive and I had a disagreement over some matters, and Kobudi had to intervene via a call. I had a lot of trouble accepting an answer that I did not agree with, and I felt that I was constrained from doing what I wanted. And to some extent, I felt that I shouldn't follow the normal convention and rules because I was different. I was so adamant that I was right and wanted things to go my way. I felt I was entitled to act the way I did, disregarding other people's feeling. And in this case, it was Kobudi's and all his feeling. You know, um, the next day, I was still very annoyed at them. You know, at Olive and Kobudi, right? And I didn't care. You know, if I promised Olive to meet at the train station at a certain time, and I just acted the way I wanted to. So basically, she had to wait in the train station for 2 hours with no internet because I had the dongle. You know that when you go to Japan, you have that Wi-Fi dongle. Yeah, I was so entitled that I kept it. You know, and you know, looking back, I didn't realize how entitled I was. You know, and I just want to say, firstly, you know, I'm sorry, babe. just giving you the face. Sorry, face. But thanks, thanks for putting up with me all this time, right? And honestly speaking, this is something that I'm still working on. It's not something that I've overcame, and I'm still trying to grow in it. There are times, be it knowingly or unknowingly, I've felt and acted very entitled, and it is not something that I can overcome by myself or with my own strength. I probably would not realize that I have this life trap in the first place if I have only relied on my own strength and understanding. I'm very lucky and grateful that I've had the opportunity to know the Word of God and have had amazing mentors, brothers and sisters in Christ to help and guide me. And throughout this time, these verses help me to be more aware and care more about others than about myself. To be more serving and to show more humility. Thank you, Marshall. Yeah, so this is one of the first 3 verses that helped me to care more about others than about myself, to be more serving and to show more humility. Sorry. I'll just quickly read it. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. The solution for those with entitlement life trap is to put others above yourself. And those with entitlement actually doesn't realize that they're entitled, right? Like me, my case, that's why we need people that we can trust around us to rebuke us and make us aware of our wrong ways. Next verse, Marsh. The next verse is in Luke 9:23-26. Then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them. And he comes in his glory and in glory of the Father and of the holy angels. And it is up to us, right, to act upon our own ending and choose our own flesh and go with what is comfortable, or to deny ourselves and actually go with God's word. And the last but not least, the last verse that really helped me is from the 1 Corinthians 6:12, right? I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. So, I just want to remind everyone here, don't be entitled. Be aware that you're entitled and seek help as well. But most and foremost, and finally, just to go to God, right? Go back to His Word, and you have the right to do anything, right? But not everything is beneficial. So, thank you for letting me share. I shall pass it on to Marshall and Ali for the next sharing. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Calvin. Everyone give Calvin, a nice word of applause. He because he's entitled, he really likes, words of encouragement. So please give it to him. But anyways, no, Calvin's entitlement is, I think, more common than, okay, maybe not to the extreme, but quite common in a lot of Indonesian people as well, right? We grew up in, we had a lot of lax limits, right, growing up, and we could pretty much do whatever we wanted in high school, in college, and everything, right? So and because of that, we feel like we're entitled to luxuries, to success, to our spoiled lives, right? And I think that can also lead a little bit to insufficient self-control. So going deeper into insufficient self-control, I mean, this is a really big definition, but I'm not going to read it because it's a bit complicated. This is the official definition, but I think the simple summary, right, is that the core message of insufficient self-control is that I should not be uncomfortable, and if I feel uncomfortable, I will do something about it, right? And that's kind of what insufficient self-control, the main voice in your head is, right? So when you're feeling maybe impatient, or when you're feeling maybe with no limits or no boundaries, anything goes, or you kind of feel discomfort or difficult situations, a person with insufficient self-control will often try to simply avoid the pain, procrastinate, run away from the difficult situation or task. Or they'll also, try to give in to the temptation, right? So they are looking for that quick fix, the drug, to kind of, make them feel happier or better about themselves. Right? Whether that's eating a lot, having sex, whether that's doing drugs, alcohol, drinking, partying, shopping, all that kind of stuff. Or they can also sometimes, because they're feeling insufficient, they can also express themselves negatively emotionally because they have low patience in general, right? Now, this is a comic that kind of best describes insufficient self-control, where we see that in this situation, we have this, chubby little guy, right, who's eating an ice cream, and he has his wife who kind of talks to him about, oh no, the husband didn't do something, right? And you see that in this case, the man doesn't fill out the form because he feels, oh man, it's too hard to fill out. So then the wife, he says, oh, he'll make some excuse, like, oh, I'll do it again tomorrow. But lo and behold, that's what he said. That's what he said last year as well. It's a chronic procrastination. And after once the wife is gone, and he's like, oh, perfect. Now he can eat his, shake, his beer, his ice cream, his sandwich while watching TV. And then when the kid comes, he's like, hey, daddy, can I have a piece of cake too? He's like, no, you're not allowed to. You got to be healthy, right? So what we see is that this guy faces these difficult situations, right? He procrastinates, and once that as he procrastinates, he kind of gives in to his temptations because he's kind of stressed maybe about the form, and he also expresses his emotions negatively, right? I don't know if this is sound familiar for any of us here, but I feel like a lot of us can feel this way sometimes with homework, right, as a kid. But actually, that's exactly what happened as a kid for this guy, right? How he developed, this actually the same guy. How he developed this schema is that, as a kid, he hated doing his homework. So he started to read his whole comic book or played games or, did other things, right? Whenever the parents asked, he would be like, oh, it's all good. It's fine, right? Oh, I'll do it later. And, you know, the parent is loving, he's caring. But I think the reason why this kid kind of develops insufficient control is normally one of four ways, right? Whether the kid's parents didn't really give enough limits growing up, so the kid could do whatever he wanted, right? They could eat whatever they wanted, sleep however they wanted, do it pretty much whatever they wanted. And or secondly, the kid also didn't have enough consequences. So despite, for example, in this case, not doing homework, he wasn't, scolded on, wasn't disciplined properly, right? Or in a common case in many Indonesian children, we didn't grow up really by our parents. We kind of were grown up by our grandparents or by our nannies. And most often they'll spoil us and give us whatever we wanted. Every time we cried, we'd get what we wanted pretty much instantly. Or another unique one is the child didn't really have to put much effort growing up because the child was naturally talented. They were super smart growing up. The parents said, oh, you're so smart, do whatever you want. So that when life got harder, the kid ended up not having the ability to have self-discipline to work hard from a young age, right? So I think now we have this little background of what's it called, of insufficient self-control. I want us to kind of go through this Menti again, and it's a new Menti link, so please go to the new Menti link, and I want us to kind of open up about insufficient self-control, and I want to understand from everyone here um, how they're doing it insufficient self-control. So 64 96 00. Cool. So if everyone can go to the Menti and think about it, right? Ale, do you want to go on and lead?
Yeah, sure. All right. So here are some of the things about insufficient self control. Um, I can't seem to discipline myself to complete most routine or boring task. So it could be anything like chores, or I think when we were in school, like our homeworks, they're so mundane. Second one, if I can't reach a goal, I become easily frustrated and give up. So it's more like someone who's very like result oriented compared to like process oriented. And then I have a very difficult time sacrificing immediate gratification or pleasure to achieve a long range goal. And then I can't force myself to do things I don't enjoy, even when I know it's for my own good. So, yeah, denying oneself for something of a greater good. And then I have rarely been able to stick to my resolutions, whether it's New Year resolutions or just anything in general. So we could see that, oh, there's a lot of people who cannot stick to their resolutions and pretty much in between about forcing things they don't enjoy and completing routine or boring tasks. Oh, interesting. Should we move forward, Marsh? Okay. So, hi guys. My name is Ale. Actually, my full name is Talena, but my nickname is Ale. And thank you for the opportunity to share. So, basically, just a little bit background about me. I had a pretty stable family who was always supportive. And growing up, our family is always just pretty stable financially and emotionally. There were no any, I was just in a very happy family being brought up. If we talk back about the quadrant that was earlier shared, my parents' type of parenting is quite interesting because they gave me a lot of freedom to fail, but they were very uptight socially for me. So I didn't have any restrictions or like they were never really demanding when it comes to school. But that's also because I was the interesting kid that Marsh shared, where my background as a kid, like I didn't have to put a lot of effort in school, basically. So growing up in school, I was basically a fast learner, and I never really had problems in school from elementary up to high school, I think. I was always considered the most talented or the most artistic in class. So basically, I'm always so used to getting my way since I was a kid. Like what Ariana said. Next slide. I want it, I got it. So as I grew up older and older, of course, I don't always get what I want, right? I'm not Ariana Grande. Um, and it becomes like harder because I started to see that, oh, like I'm not always the smartest one, I'm not always the most talented one. I think it all started during high school because so many exams, and then after that, it's college. So I studied architecture in Bandung, and that was probably the first time in my life that I was exposed to an environment that I'm not the smartest, I'm not the most talented, and I'm not the most creative student because I was studying in Universitas Katolik Parahyangan, which is very famous for its architecture jurusan architecture-nya. Jadi there are so many kids yang were also like born artistic or like born talented, and they just knew from the start they wanted to do architecture just like me. So it was a very new environment, and I really, really had to persevere when things get hard, especially yeah, the things that I had to do for school was very rigorous, lots of lack of sleep, and I really, really had to earn my way to get a really good grade. Like getting an A was like super, super hard, and I was so used to getting an A since elementary. Um, so when things get hard and I don't always get what I want, I get very upset because I was brought up, like how I was brought up made me become a result oriented person. So if I don't get any result as how I expected it to be, it's extremely frustrating for me. So whenever that happens, I always get to a point where I'm upset, just like that diagram that Marsh showed, I find different escapes. So I would either give into temptations, or I would just be very upset and like show like fits of rage. So during that time, especially in college, there were a lot of guys, and there were parties, concerts, just to make me feel happy again. But of course, like everything was instant gratification. Like it's not long term at all. But I hate feeling that way. So I just need like a quick fix because I hate not getting what I want. And I think the most recent thing that happened is probably during the pandemic in 2020. It was a very confusing time being confined at home. Especially, I'm someone who's very extrovert and I gain my energy from the people around me and my friends. And I couldn't go to concerts. I cannot do the things that I could normally do whenever I'm upset. So it was very, very hard for me. And I felt very frustrated. Like I was kind of like depressed for like the first couple of months. And I really had to fight it. Like I'm like the worst person when it comes to persevering. And I'm the worst, I'm like the most impatient person. And it was so hard that I feel like I was in a very difficult situation, and all of my sinful nature just like came out all at once. Like all of the things that I'm struggling with, it's like all put in one place. And I couldn't find the release or the distraction that I could prior to the pandemic. Like usually I think previously, like if I'm like just really frustrated, I can like just meet my friend or like whatever, but there weren't a lot of options that I could do and like just stay at home a lot. um so I tried and tried, and I just go back to like that entire cycle. And what helped me the most, and I'm just really grateful for, is the accountability from the sisters in Christ in GEM. So when I was struggling so hard, like I decided to make like a what do you call it, like it's more like an accountability WhatsApp group. There's like Sonia, Olive, and Anna in there. And like whenever I'm tempted, or whenever I know that I'm like I'm about to like lose my self-control, like I just like talk to them and I just share to them, or I would just like call them up. And it was it really, really helped a lot, because there was a couple of times where I was so frustrated and I just wanted to give up. Like I just knew kayak aduh udah deh, kayak this is so hard. Like I don't even know how can I face this. I don't even know how long this is going on. And like I started becoming like super self-pity, like I'm never gonna get through this. I'm just gonna be the same person all over again because I don't see any results. Like I tried, and I just fall all the time. But I'm just so thankful that having that support system that could really also show me the word of God and showing my true identity in Christ, and like just continually showing how much God loves me and how much God actually gave me a spirit of power, but not the spirit of timidity. And that they have my back, but especially like God and the Holy Spirit also have my back to fight all of it. So right now, of course, I'm still working on it. But if I look back, I can definitely see the milestones that I had in terms of tackling my insufficient self control. And accountability from the sisters plays such a huge part of it. Like, I can't even imagine like fighting through all of that alone. I think I'll just be crazy and stuck at home, don't know what to do. But yeah, and I also just want to share this one verse, which is from Romans 5. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. So this verse really speaks to me because I think when I became a Christian, like I was so excited that, oh, God really loves me. I have grace. I've been justified through faith, and I have I have like pretty much everything that I can have from God. But at the same time, like we cannot just delete the suffering part. Like it's also a part of being with God. And it's not because God wants us to suffer, but because through those trials, through those sufferings, it produces perseverance, it produces character, and in the end, it produces hope. So reading this verse just really gives me so much encouragement, because I knew that these things that I'm struggling with, it's not going to be in vain. And like, if I can really pass through and like really persevere during the hard times, I'm going to produce great character, and I can have so much more hope than I have before I even suffered, or like before I even went through this entire thing. So I think I just really want to encourage everyone here. I hope my sharing was helpful and relatable. And yeah, that's for me. That's from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ale. And Ale has definitely grown a lot in this aspect. And I think a lot of us, we all to an extent struggle a lot with entitlement, insufficient control. And I think another big one relatable is approval seeking, right? Where a lot of us feel like we need to, seek approval in many, many different things. Again, this is the dictionary definition, but again, it's too much long. So, if I can kind of summarize, right? How can approval normally manifest, right? And obviously, one easy example of approval seeking is, Instagram and social media likes, right? Sometimes we can give a different profile of ourselves on Instagram. Why? So that people will like us more, so that we get compliments, so that people tell us we look good or look pretty, right? It can also exist in the form of money and success. We constantly seek recognition or success so we can, feel better about ourselves. Sometimes approval can also manifest in the form of parents. We're asking our parents for approval, and we're desperately seeking them to approve of what we do because we always get scolded at. So we just desperately want them to be proud of us. Sometimes it can also be spotlight, where we want what's it called? The spotlight and attention that says, "Hey, we're cool. We're recognized." Um, as well, sometimes it can be about fitting in, where this brown egg wants to just be a white egg like everyone else. So and I think if we kind of go back again, right, what we've been talking about a lot as well is that a lot of it, approval seeking, can be really caused by wanting to please our parents, right? Whether they were super controlling, or they kept talking about status, wealth, recognition, or appearance. A lot of parents in Indo can be like, "Oh, nggak boleh gitu. You cannot talk about anything. You have to look good. You have to always, be seen as someone in this community, or you have to look good. You have to, be praised." It's all about the outside appearance and being jaim, rather than about actually the person itself, right? Um, and so because of that, I want to kind of go into the Menti straight away, right? And same link as the previous one, 649600, and it will be about approval seeking. So I'll give everyone a little bit of time to kind of use the code as well, 649600. And there are 6 main questions when it comes to approval seeking, right? The first one is, oh, somebody's super not approval seeking. Um, but having money and knowing important people makes me feel worthwhile. Oh, that guy's opposite, 6 all the way. um, and sometimes for a lot of us, right, we think that when we have money or being seen as someone important in society, it makes us feel a lot more worthwhile. Maybe our parents told us that a lot growing up, right? And for some people, it can be about accomplishments, right? They feel that accomplishments are so valuable to them if other people notice them, right? And oh, there's someone echoing, so if someone can mute. Um, and for some other people, maybe it's about attention to themselves, right? Unless they get a lot of attention, they feel like I'm not as important in society. For others, maybe it's about they want to be recognized and admired in social situations, or for some other people, it's about praise and accomplishments, right? So if we look at Jem, we see that for a lot of us, growing in Asian society, it's a lot about money, and it's a lot of, at the same time, it's a lot about praise and compliments, right? We want to be, seen. We want to get that recognition. We want to get that like. We want to get, the accomplishments or to look good because it makes us feel more important about ourselves, right? And that's kind of what approval seeking is all about, right? It's we do things so that others can see us and that we can feel better about ourselves in the process. So going back to the slide itself, right? The consequence of approval seeking and where it becomes quite dangerous is that it can often lead to two types of behavior. One is the subjugated behavior, and the other is the overcompensate behavior. So some examples of subjugation is when someone tells you that you're wrong. So oftentimes you can either change your soft or change your position, like, oh, I'm wrong. Okay, maybe you're right, right? Or they'll say, or they feel really hurt by that disagreement, or they kind of conform to what you said, even if they don't agree, but because you disapprove, they also don't approve for some reason or another, right? Or oftentimes they can do it even if they don't want to, because they can't say no to you, right? So if you're subjugating, you're dealing with someone like Calvin who can't take no for an answer, you're gonna struggle, right? Um, and other than that, or if you kind of keep quiet, right? Or not voicing an opinion, or even asking too much permission, or even saying sorry too much, right? This can often be a behavior with subjugation with approval seeking. On the other hand, right, you can see a lot of people overcompensate with approval seeking. And in social media, we see this a lot, right? We start to see people giving insincere compliments for approval, like, oh my God, you're so pretty. No, you're so pretty. No, you're prettier, right? Or they can, spread gossip. Or, for the other side, they can even act like the master or know-it-all because they want to get the spotlight on them, right? A lot of this is so many forms of approval seeking, and it can vary in many different ways. But ultimately, this is kind of the behavior that is created. And I think the dangerous part of approval seeking, right, is that in the desperate search for acceptance, we often rob ourselves of our own joy, and it's that path of obstruction that leads nowhere. And I think this is one of the biggest drawbacks with social media is the approval seeking behavior that social media inherently creates, is the fishing for likes, is the validation that you look good or you're pretty or you're accepted in society, right? So with that, we will have our very own Abe sharing for us about approval seeking. But his approval seeking is not necessarily in the traditional sense with social media or his selfies, right? But actually it's more about him and his parents and how he's been struggling to live with this desire to always seek his parents' approval for everything. So with that, we'll have Abe come to the stage.
All right. Good evening, guys. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you, Marsh. Yeah, I just want to pick up where Marsh left off. I do have an issue with approval seeking, especially with my parents. So, can you press next slide, Marsh? Marsh, yeah. So this is my family, and yeah, growing up, I'm really blessed to have them. To have parents that really cared for me deeply. But I believe because of their parents as well, so my grandpa and their upbringing as a child, that do not have a lot of limits or parental guidance. I feel that they, because of that, they feel that by giving me limits and by giving me like a lot of guidance, and to me and my sibling is the best way for them to show their love. And despite the positive side, which I feel loved and I feel taken care of, but it developed this approval seeking schema that I only figure out afterwards. So a few examples like how my dad used to limit me. you know I remember, like, as a kid, when we go to vacation, like to Singapore, I would argue really hardly with my dad because I wanted to go out, walk in like Orchard Road using my jeans and my new bought sneakers. But like my dad wouldn't allow me, and he insisted that I wear short trousers, kayak celana pendek gitu, and sandals when I go out the house. And like I really cannot leave the house if I don't use sandals and short trousers. And we would argue like for a long time because of that, you know. So, and then there's also like growing up, I'm not allowed to have like an allowance. So kaya I really don't have any money even after finishing college. So every time I want to buy something, it's like I need to apa ya, seek funding from an angel investor gitu loh. Everything I want to buy, gue harus prepare a pitch deck and ask, you know, hopefully get my approval from my boss gitu. And you know, I think kayak I just want to show a meme that I found on the internet that really cracked me up. And yeah, so I'm an adult now. I can do whatever I want, but you know, I can only do it if I have his permission, right? And I have many more examples that I can share, but it's just gonna take a lot of time. And you know, even I know my dad's intention is good for protecting me, right? But because of my conflict avoiding nature, I choose the easy route and just Yoda. I just follow him. I just became subjugated, you know, and I every time he would say no for an answer because he's entitled, like Calvin. I'm sorry. I mean, he's just entitled, but he. Sorry, Cal. I don't. Maksudnya, he cannot say no for an answer, and apa ya? I just cannot reason with him. So I just submit to him, and Yoda, okay, whatever you say, I follow, right? And as a kid growing up, that felt really good, gitu. It made me very peaceful karena jadi kita nggak berantem banyak. But uh, it was all good and well up until I have my first child, right? And I remember that as you know, when we had our first child in the very first few months, and my wife Wendy was, you know, was just like pumping milk in our living room because we live in an apartment, so it's like the door is really near to the living room. And basically, one day my parents just barge in, like without any prior information. Terus Wendy was in the living room pumping, you know, with like, yeah, gitu pumping ya. And I remember kayak that night it didn't end well. We argue a lot. Wendy was really shocked. Terus, and I remember like during at that time, gua instead of like protecting Wendy, I was because I just wanted to get my dad's approval and like apa ya, just want to kayak I don't want to fight with him. I decided to I told my wife like to loosen up gitu loh. Just be chill lah, when it's my parents, you know, take a chill pill. You know, it's not that bad anyway, right? And uh it only makes matter worse gitu loh. And we ended up having to get counseling because of that. So but deep inside of me, I was really conflicted, like at the time, like, whose approval should I get to should I get my dad, my parents, or Wendy gitu kan. And I was really afraid to let my parents down, but on the other hand, I'm also confused kayak I was making Wendy uncomfortable gitu. And I remember after getting counseling, I'm really grateful, you know, for this community, and it gave me a right perspective on what I should do. So it reads in. I just want to share a verse in Galatians 1 verse 10. So this is the verse that I was open up with. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God, or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ, right? And reflecting about this, I was really thinking like, am I actually seeking the approval of my dad, or my wife, or from God? And the more I think about it, the more I realize that God wasn't in the picture. it was all about people close to me that I think it's important, but at the end of the day, they're still humans, gitu. And this revelation made me gave me the courage to do what's right. And actually, I took time to sit down with my dad and talk about it. Uh, and yeah, just share his feeling. But actually, when I did that, the result wasn't always good. So he didn't handle it well. But when I did that, it actually gave me peace, because I have the right perspective, and I know that whatever, even my dad, even if he doesn't approve like of my action, gitu loh, or I make him little less happy or proud of me, but I know God will always be proud of me, if I'm doing the right thing and follow the Bible. So this schema is something I'm actually really struggling with. The entitlement, like the insufficient self-control, also approval seeking, and this is something that I know I think I'm going to have it until the day I die. But it's about persevering and improving, right? And because I'm blessed with this community that can really help me to be closer to God, I know what the right view towards approval seeking, And just to close out my sharing, I want to share a few Bible verses that encourages me about my decision in depending on God. So it reads in 2 Corinthians 3, verse 4 to 5. Such confidence we have through Christ before God. Not that we are competent in ourselves to claim anything for ourselves, but our competence comes from God. And the other one is, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. And when we please people, we show that we need their approval to feel fulfilled in life. But when God is our true shepherd, it's so freeing, because we trust the story he has written for us in our life, and the only opinion that matters is his. So we have a desire to please as humans, and God put that in us so we could channel it to pleasing him in this life and being secure in that. So thanks for listening, guys.
All right, just give a round of applause for Abe. And he's someone who's definitely also used to really struggling with approval seeking, especially with his dad. I've heard even more crazier stories with that, and a bunch of different crazy things with him and his family. But at the end of the day, it all goes down to the schemas that we have, right? Entitlement, insufficient self-control, and approval seeking, like we talked about today, right? These three schemas are kind of the result of us having either too many limits or too little limits, right? Growing up. So it's kind of hard. Some of us all want to be parents one day, but it's kind of difficult because you can't have too many limits and you can't be too controlling at the same time. So you got to strike the balance of freedom and limits. But regardless of how we plan on raising our kids, the point is, for us, right, what is the solution for entitlement, insufficient, and approval seeking? Well, the opposite for entitlement is putting others above yourself. So if you're an entitled person, when you start to force yourself to care about others first and foremost, I think that's the one key thing to get us out of entitlement. Because when you're entitled, you only think and care about yourself. But when you start to care about others, then you start to grow in your humility and your serving Him, right? But insufficient self-control, it's about the accountability first and foremost, right? Sure, you can talk about perseverance and growing in your self-control, but without accountability, it's going to be very difficult for us to grow in insufficient self-control. We need brothers and sisters who can love us and care for us and also keep us accountable so that we don't fall again. And lastly, with approval seeking, the solution is really about finding your security in God and realizing that you don't need to please other people. All you have to do is please God. So with that, that'll be all for today. So thank you guys all for coming and sharing. One of the most important parts of the GEM talk actually is the breakout rooms, right? Where we actually can discuss about all the different things that we learned about today. And the three questions that I want to ask about today in the breakout room is, can you recall instances when you were younger about how your parents raised you? what kind of style was it? What were they strict about, right? And how did that actually shape the way you developed either entitlement, insufficient self-control, or proofing? Because I believe all of us, to some form of shape, have one of these three in mild examples, right? And then the last one is, which of these schemas do we still struggle with now, right? And what helps us to get over it? What doesn't help? And how can, our community help you? I'll get to that. So with that, I just want to thank you again, and we'll be splitting to our breakout rooms now. You present.